New year, new manager at Chelsea. Happy Blue Year, Enzo Maresca, as he is sacked as the Chelsea boss. Chelsea deciding that the position was untenable after 2 weeks of a fracturing of the relationship, which started with the worst 48 hours in his Chelsea career and ended with a run of 1 win in 7 matches. Alex Crook has been across this story. You and I were talking about this on our New Year's Eve show after he phoned it in after the Bournemouth game, said he was sick. He wasn't sick. We didn't think he was sick at the time. He was assessing his options. Chelsea were assessing their options as well, and he has gone. So who's responsible for this mess?
Well, I think Enzo Maresca would like it billed as him resigning, but the reality is managers don't walk away from big Premier League contracts. I think this is a decision that ultimately has been taken by Chelsea. You've mentioned the recent run of form. You've mentioned the outburst that he had after that Everton win. And actually, I think the caller we had on our show a couple of days ago suggesting that since then this has been the longest resignation letter in football is pretty much bang on. It looked untenable. Chelsea have decided it's untenable. And there are a few factors in this. They're not happy with the number of points dropped from winning positions, both in the Premier League and the Champions League, 20 in the two competitions combined. That's something that you've, as a Chelsea fan, have highlighted as a cause for concern. Had they not dropped all those points, they could be as high as second in the Premier League table. And I think we now also understand that the outburst he had after the Everton game was not so much aimed at the hierarchy, but actually aimed at the medical staff who were telling him how to manage the minutes of certain players. Instructions we understand that he went against, and that didn't go down well in the boardroom. And there's also a suspicion at Stamford Bridge that he may already have held talks with Manchester City about succeeding Pep Guardiola. So it's a deadly cocktail, really, that in the end has spelt the end for Maresca.
Yeah, we understand that one of the main issues is that Chelsea, the sporting entity, think that the medical department should be listened to, should be followed, especially when it comes to player workload and welfare. But those decisions must be taken, Scott, autonomous from the manager. How on earth does that work?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I heard Carlo Ancelotti say not that long ago, if I'm being told that I've got to rest a player, if my eyes tell me I should, I will. If they tell me I won't, I shouldn't, I don't need to, then I won't. And all the outside noise of, 1 win in 6 and then 1 win in 7 after the Bournemouth game and, this isn't happening. And yet he's being told who he can and can't play and who he's almost got to take off. And he's getting all the stick in terms of the substitutions. He's not totally blameless, of course, but you and I have both said he's a young, up-and-coming manager, very talented coach. Maybe could be construed as lucky of getting the job in the first place, but I think he's more than earned his stripes in the short time he's been there. And he knows what it will take to get that little bit further. Wanted a centre-half in the summer when Levi Colwill got injured, and he said, no, deal with what you've got. The youngest Premier League side average starting 11 ever. And everyone's expecting him to go and be a Premier League title challenger. So if he's now being told who he can play and who he's got to bring off, which I was with Crookie at the Bridge midweek, I didn't have a problem with any of his substitutions apart from the Cole Palmer one. But if that's almost forced upon him, then that's not management.
Well, it's going to be impossible for whoever steps into those shoes, and we'll talk about that very shortly. But Enzo Maresca, as you rightly say, is not blameless either. Some of the selection decisions in the first place have been a little bit baffling. But again, now we know that there is a huge influence from the medical staff about who he can and can't play. We don't really know whether or not he was picking the team at all, really, do we? And I suppose from his point of view, now that that has come out, he can point to that and say, well, you keep having to go at my team selections and my substitutions, but truly it wasn't all to do with me. And the ones that he got wrong, he can turn around and say it was the medical department. The ones he got right, he can say, oh yeah, those ones were mine. But he has had a relatively successful time at Chelsea, and the fact that he won the Conference League, which he was expected to do. He got them into the top 4, which he was expected to do with the investment that he had. The one thing he did, which I don't think many people expected, was take them to the Club World Cup. Now, financially, that's been an absolute massive benefit for Chelsea. Marketing-wise, it's a massive benefit for Chelsea. Globally, it puts them on the world stage. It means they can wear that silly disc in the middle of the kit for the next 4 years. But also, it was an unexpected triumph, and financially that brings in a lot of extra cash. It's good kudos for the American owners to go and win the Club World Cup in America as well. So he has done a relatively good job, I think. But I think we've always said he is the physical embodiment of the squad. Young, a little bit naive sometimes, learning on the job. He has potential. Doesn't have a particularly great backstory in terms of coaching. He won the championship with Leicester, but that was his first job as a frontline manager. Arguably, could you say, Crook, that since he arrived at Chelsea, he's done well enough to inflate his own value in a move which would be similar to the way they want to behave with players, really? He's sort of almost elevated his own value and now moving on. Only Chelsea aren't going to get the benefit this time because no one's going to come in and pay 20 million quid for him.
Well, you say that. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs of the discussion and the payoff that has been agreed. I would imagine there is a stipulation that if he takes another job, bearing in mind they believe he's been speaking to Manchester City, then they will be properly compensated. But you're right. I think his stock certainly is higher on the way out than it is when he came in. And we're going to talk about potential successors. And I was on air with Adrian Durham on New Year's Day, and he said, well, surely they can't possibly take the manager who's 7th in Ligue 1. And I said, well, they took the manager from Leicester. So I don't think the business model is going to change. And I think they will continue to invest in young players and young up-and-coming coaches as well.
Well, the model is not going to change, and they're quite clear about that. They have no plans to change their model. There are only a handful of names in the frame for this particular job, and we'll get to that in just a second. But a lot of people focusing on the fact that Liam Rosenior could be the next candidate. In fact, I told Crook, in what month was it that I told you he was going to be the next Chelsea manager?
Well, it was a while ago.
September?
We did a piece in the Transfer Notebook as well, saying that Chelsea were aware of interest from other Premier League clubs and wanted to keep him in the system as they see him as someone who ultimately could become their manager. I think probably this would be a little sooner than they expected, but I'm told the short list of potential replacements is very small. They expect to make an appointment pretty imminently, although probably not in time for Manchester City this weekend. And Liam Rosenior is very much one of the names in the frame.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be Liam because he's someone who's worked in the system and he wants to further his career, and because of the fact that they think that they can probably control him a little bit. Scott, is that a little bit fair? I mean, not saying that they want a yes man in the job, but I think they want a yes man in the job, don't they, really, to be honest with you? I'm not saying Liam's going to be that, but I think he's very good at managing in this system, if that makes any sense.
Well, if Enzo Maresca's been told who he can and can't play, then what's going to change for Liam? So, there's no way that the likes of a Roberto De Zerbi or someone like that is going to...
They're not even in the frame. I think
exactly.
I don't even think there is a list, to be honest with you. I think they're just going to just move Liam across. I'll be surprised if they don't.
Yeah, quite possibly. Look, I worked with Liam, excuse me, for a good few years at Sky. He's a wonderful human being, a really good person. You could tell he was tactically astute, and actually he's transferred that from the media to being a manager. But it's one thing being a manager of Strasbourg. It's another thing being a manager of Chelsea Football Club. And what do these owners want? Do they want trophies, and do they want them as soon as they can possibly get them? Or is it actually just... Is it just a business? Is it just a hedge fund that they just want to try and bring in players that are young and then just sell them at any given time? If you happen to win a trophy along the way, then they're happy with that. Liam, I think, could easily be a Chelsea manager, but not right now. It's too early for him. And look, I know him really well, and he's a good guy. And I'm not going to try and contact him and sort of find out what's happening. We'll find out soon enough. But I just don't see how things are going to change in 12 months, 18 months down the line when he's not ready. One, he's not being given the ready-made world-class players to go on and win the title when everyone's expecting they should. He's learning on the job himself, and he's being told who he can and can't pick. This is just a continual, perpetual story, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. And that's the problem. And that's why if you're a Chelsea supporter, then it feels as if you're sort of almost the fan of a soulless entity that is more interested in trading players and managers for profit than it is for winning trophies. Yes, they have won 2 trophies in the last year, the Conference League and the Club World Cup. That is very good because at the moment it's at the beginning of, or as you and I said, sort of like the 2nd or 3rd year into the project. And at that point, you've got to start doing something. And they hadn't up until then. They did. They won the Conference League. They won the Club World Cup. But can you see Chelsea winning the title? Can you really see that as a prospect in the near to mid-term future? The answer is no, because there is no senior players in the dressing room that can drag that team through. Now, I suppose you could hope that Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo and latterly maybe Trevor Chalobah might grow into those figures that can drag teams through later on in their careers. That might be in 2 or 3 years' time, if Chelsea keep hold of them for that long, because we all know that the main reason they've bought in some of these young players is to inflate their value and sell them on. Estevao is a prime example of that, right? So this is a kid who is going to be a Ballon d'Or winner. I've said that from the minute that he arrived at Chelsea. I said it before he turned up at Chelsea, because he's that talented. He's terrific. If you watch him, every time he gets the ball, there is a frisson of excitement that goes through the crowd, because he is so unbelievably creative and has this wonderful balance and an ability to weave past players, magic that Chelsea haven't had since Eden Hazard. He's going to be in the bracket with Hazard, Zola and Charlie Cook. He is. That is going to happen. But how long are Chelsea going to have him for? How long before Real Madrid say, oh, we'll pay 150 million for him? Because as soon as they do that, we know what the answer is going to be from Blueco. They're going to say, fantastic, off you go, son. We're going to reinvest it somewhere else, because that's what they want to do. So we don't see him win the Champions League at Chelsea. We don't see him win the Premier League at Chelsea. What we get is we get to develop him for somebody else. And then we flip him over and make a load of money out of it. I'm not sure that that's going to hold with the fan base that's used to winning a lot of trophies. And it's all right saying, well, it's a different model now. Everything's different. It's a different Chelsea in 2026 than it was in 2006. But the fans still want to win. The fans still want to be entertained. The fans still want to feel as if they've got a chance of picking up a trophy that they've been used to seeing Chelsea win over the last 25 years. They don't just want to flush it down the drain and see money flowing into the Blueco bank account, Scott.
100%, Sam. And, I know you're speaking from the heart as well as the head there. I just want to hear them come out and say, because when I say about winning trophies, obviously you say they've won 2 trophies last season. I'm talking about the major trophies, the Premier League, the Champions League. Look, if an Estevao comes in and Real Madrid won him, then most Brazilian kids will want to go to Real Madrid. So I'd kind of half understand that. So well done for picking him in the first place. But this even more so of hearing that Enzo Maresca's being told and being forced almost by the hierarchy to extremely listen to the medical science and not just to your eyes. That really worries me. That really worries me for Chelsea. And you mentioned the word soulless, and it feels like this is not football. This is not for the fans. It's not about the community of Chelsea. And the community of Chelsea is worldwide now. Chelsea Football Club should be chasing the top trophies. And the way they're going with this model, it's all about, it looks great on the balance sheet, but what are they going to win in the next 5 years?
Because if they really thought that they were about sporting success, Crook, they would have invested in Maresca. They would have invested in trying to keep him and shape him and build him into the top manager that they thought he could be when they hired him. But they don't really. They've proved their point that they want a yes man in the dugout, because as soon as he's spoken out against them, he's off. Like as soon as Poch spoken out against them, he was off. What they want is someone in there who's going to do as they are told within certain parameters. They don't want a big personality. I told Crook about this about 6 months ago. Enzo Maresca set up an Instagram account, right? Or his people did. And that was very quickly sort of put down or told, don't populate that too much, because they don't want him to become a big star. They don't want Enzo Maresca to be the big star of Chelsea. They want Chelsea Football Club to be the star, the players to be the star, so that they can sell them on and inflate their value. One of the issues here is that you've got a very odd ownership group, and the fact that you've got a lot of different voices in the top of the organisation, but there's one big main owner in Begdag Eghbali who owns the majority of the shares of Blueco, and he's the one who really calls the shots. And look, I don't know, Crook, you'll tell us more about what's happening in the boardroom, because I know you've got a close ear to the ground there. But I imagine that what we've said about the player trading, that's still very high on the agenda for Chelsea going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The message coming out of Stamford Bridge when Maresca's departure was announced was very much, our model will not change. So whoever comes in he's going to have to adhere to it. And that's why I think it does lend itself to someone like Liam Rosenior. I don't want to say that he's a yes man. I'm sure that he would rally against that, but I think he is someone who will follow instructions and follow the model. And you talk about whose decision this is ultimately, you're spot on. It's Behdad Eghbali. It was his decision to remove Mauricio Pochettino, and I think he's been the driving force behind this. Not that Maresca has helped himself at times. And again, I was in the tunnel at Stamford Bridge after the Bournemouth game, and half a dozen executives, the two sporting directors, Eghbali himself, came past me. They've been in the dressing room as they are after every game. A lot of managers out there who simply will not tolerate that.
Only 2 sporting directors went into the dressing room after the game.
There may have been more.
What are the other 3 doing? Crikey. Obviously on a laptop somewhere, furiously scouting for somebody else to flip. Right, okay. I don't think there's much more to say about that, apart from Chelsea take on Manchester City at the weekend. Good luck with that, fellas.